مرحبا وأهلا بكم في برنامج داخل واشنطن. معكم مضيفكم روبرت ساتلوف. بكل المقاييس ألقى جو بايدن خطاب تنصيب ملهم. جاءت كلماته بلسم يداوي الجراح بعد الأحداث المروعة التي شهدتها الأسابيع الأخيرة، ولكن بدعوته إلا وحدة الصف لتضييق قوة خلافاتنا الوطنية وعرضه لأفكار كبيرة لمواجهة التحديات الهائلة التي نشهدها. ترى رئيسنا الجديد واحدا من أهم الأسئلة الأساسية في مضمار السياسة الأمريكية. في ظل حكومتنا المنقسمة، إذا يتساوى بالضبط عدد الجمهوريين والديمقراطيين في مجلس الشيوخ ويكاد يتساوى في مجلس النواب، هل يمكن أن يخضع الرئيس بايدن بوحدة الصف والتقدم كليهما، أم يدور إلا الاختيار ما بين وحدة الصف أو التقدم؟ الحديث عن فكرتي وحدة الصف والتقدم في مضمار السياسة الأمريكية اليوم، وخاصة إذا تستعد أمتنا للمحاكمة الثانية للأزل دونالد ترامب، يسرني أن أرحب بالمراقبين السياسيين المتميزين ديفيد هوكينز ونينا بيرلي. Welcome back to Dakhel, Washington. It was an inauguration unlike any other. Almost no one was there. Held at a time when America is involved in crisis after crisis. Did Joe Biden rise to the occasion? Let's ask our panelists, David Hawkins and Nina Burley. Thank you very much for joining us today. David, what did you think? And how was it received in a deeply divided Washington?
So of course, the new president's one-word message was unity, and unity in a capital city more deeply divided than it's ever been in modern times. And I would say that it was received with lots of skepticism by the Republican side, by the other side, who wondered right away what the new president was talking about when he is preaching unity and yet seems, at least in the early goings, to be promoting policies and people that don't immediately seem to draw many Republicans toward a more unified position. So, I mean, I think the president is unity is a subtle word. I think what he's talking about was he wants the country to unify around a common purpose, even when the politicians are not unified behind any particular policy to address that common purpose. So that's the more complicated message that he's having a hard time selling.
Nina, unity and the inaugural address, how did you find it?
Well, I haven't been in Washington for quite a while, so I'm coming to you from upstate New York. So this is Trump country around me, across the river. I'm looking out the window at Pennsylvania. I thought that the inaugural address was the exact opposite of the 2016 American Carnage inaugural address. I thought it was terrific for the moment. I really was surprised that Biden rose to the occasion after, kind of coming off as a bit slow, maybe on the speaking. I've interviewed him before. He gaffes all the time, but I thought it was a terrific speech, and I thought I agree with, the notion that his first acts have not particularly been appealing, let's say, to the Republican politicians or their base.
For what it's worth, my own view is I thought it was the best speech Joe Biden ever gave. And a guy who's 78 years old has had a lot of opportunity to give a lot of good and bad speeches. And I was impressed from my living room perch at what I saw. But so if Joe Biden's theme, as you both said, is unity, but many Democrats seem to prefer progress. Unity and progress both sound like great themes, but they can often be opposites And we saw this with the speedy move to impeachment. So let's look at all the different protagonists and look at what they want. So first, we've been talking about Joe Biden and his first days. How do you assess his early priorities, the 20, 30 or so presidential executive actions? We used to call them executive orders that he has issued. When you sum it all up, is it an opportunity to set a new agenda, or is it an opportunity to do all sorts of things to get out of the way very quickly so that you can get on to another agenda?
I think this is an effort by the president, the new president, to do as much as he can with his own power and without Congress to undo the more conservative and controversial things of the last 4 years, and then to set the stage for the things that he has to get congressional cooperation on, and hopefully some Republicans working with him going forward. And he'll work on that. He has magical powers historically. As the audience may remember, he was a senator for 36 years, a very, very long time. If anybody knows how the Senate could work and might still work, it's Joe Biden. So there's still hope that after all this executive stuff is happening, that some real lasting policy can be made. Because these executive orders, just one more sentence, they only last as long as the president does. A law lasts indefinitely. An executive order only lasts for as long as the president does.
So if this is all to set the stage for legislation, where does the idea of impeachment fit in? Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic majority in the House moved full steam ahead, have now handed over impeachment article to the Senate. Chuck Schumer, the new Senate majority leader, moving full steam ahead, has begun the process of arranging for a trial. What will this do to President Biden's legislative agenda?
I think that the impeachment, it must go forward for the Democrats and really for the nation to assess the president's interaction with the insurrectionists. I mean, there's news still coming out as of yesterday. Seth Abramson found receipts regarding a meeting between at the Trump International Hotel with Flynn, the Trump kids, and all sorts of people right before on January 5th. And, the assumption is that the president was probably on speakerphone. I mean, these things have to be aired out because we can't just, this country tends to just move on. Well, after W's Iraq war folly, we didn't get the commission to look into that. We just move on. We don't look into how it's so, I mean, if this thing and what's going on here with attacking, not just the Congress, but all of these threats that's to these poor governors in these state capitals having to deal with this lunacy, and QAnon's running around in Congress. So they have to address it. But obviously, the Republicans have signaled that they're not going to let it go through. So it's just going to be some kind of a show trial that ends as the other one did.
So let me ask that, David, is an acquittal of the president, which now looks increasingly likely, but perhaps not certain, is an acquittal of the president the second time really how Democrats would like this story to end?
I don't think they think it's going to end that way. I think they know it's going to end that way. The first key vote of the trial was to dismiss the entire trial, and 45 of the 50 Republican senators voted to not even have a trial. Remember, so in other words, 5 Republicans voted yes, let's have a trial. That seems to be the ceiling for how many people would vote to convict, and you would need 12 Republicans joining with the Democrats to convict. So I think the goose is cooked. Sorry to use a cliche, but we're all set here. We know that this is going to end in an acquittal. I think many Republicans and Democrats don't think that this is how it's going to end. Of course, former president will boast that he's now been acquitted twice, but then he has plenty of other legal problems. He has the district attorney in New York looking at his finances. He has the state attorney general of New York looking at his finances. He has federal prosecutors looking at whether he can be prosecuted for this insurrection. There is still a possibility that they could that the Congress could vote using a different provision of the Constitution to keep him from running from federal office again. So I don't think this is the end of Donald Trump's legal and ethical problems.
All right. When we come back after the break, we're going to look at questions like who runs the United States Senate and how that august body will operate in a time of 50-50 even split between Democrats and Republicans in just a moment. Impeachments don't happen every day. In fact, presidential impeachments are extremely rare. Donald Trump is about to face his second impeachment trial, having been acquitted just a year ago. Before him, Bill Clinton was impeached, tried, and found not guilty. Before that, you have to go back to 1869, the impeachment and subsequent trial of Andrew Johnson, the accidental president who assumed the position when Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. Johnson opposed many of the punitive measures against former Confederates advocated by what were called radical Republicans, who wanted to get rid of him through the constitutional process of impeachment. In the end, Johnson's trial came down to just one vote by Edmund G. Ross of Kansas, who bucked his fellow Republicans in the Senate and voted not guilty. Ross's story was famously retold in the Pulitzer Prize-winning book Profiles in Courage, a collection of essays about the loneliness of bravery in American politics, as fresh today as when it was written more than 60 years ago. Who was the author of Profiles in Courage? Himself a future president, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. Again, our panelists today include David Hawkins. David has 25 years experience reporting on how Washington works, or doesn't work, as the case may be. Currently editor-in-chief of The Fulcrum, a news site covering American politics, he's formerly been senior editor of CQ and Roll Call, two must-read newspapers covering Capitol Hill. Also joining us is Nina Burley. Nina is an award-winning journalist and a New York Times best-selling author of 6 nonfiction books, including her latest, The Trump Women, Part of the Deal. All right, let's go across the aisle for a moment. Nina and David, let me ask you about the fascinating personality of Mitch McConnell. He just finished serving as Senate Majority Leader. This Republican is now back as Senate Minority Leader. When he hears Joe Biden's call for unity, is this a call to cooperate, or is he going to be intransigent and throw up obstacles? Which path is better for him and better for the Republican Party? David?
That is for those of us who pay attention to Congress, that's the $64,000 question. That's the number one question. I don't think we know the answer to it yet. What we do know is that Mitch McConnell will do what is best for him, and what is generally best for him is what keeps him in power, and what keeps him in power is knowing where the other 49 people that he's leading, the other 49 Senate Republicans, where they are ideologically and in terms of where they feel they want to collaborate versus oppose, and getting them there. Mitch McConnell made a sort of I would say a little bit of a blunder strategically in recent weeks. Kind of fascinating. He is clearly disgusted with Donald Trump. He's let that be known since the election. He talked early on after the House voted to impeach about being open to a conviction. The idea here was to he was going to step out in front of his colleagues and see if they would be willing to follow him, how many would be willing to go along. And as we discussed earlier, very few are. And so now he's back in the no trial camp. He's back in the let's not even have an impeachment trial camp. So his first move as minority leader wasn't so steady. So I think we'll now see what he decides to do. Does he decide that winning back the Senate and putting him back in charge in 2 years means some collaboration, or does it mean nothing but opposition? I don't think we know that yet, or which minor things he'll collaborate on and which he won't.
So, Nina, let me not ask you about Mitch McConnell. I want to ask you about how out in the hustings you're out there in upstate New York, rural New York. What is the view of the man on the street or the woman on the farm, as it were, of those Republicans who opposed and still oppose the legitimacy of Joe Biden's election? Someone like Ted Cruz or John Hawley of Missouri, the senators who famously voted for nullification even after the insurrection on Capitol Hill. Are these people viewed as patriots or as rebels?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we're all in isolation up here. I talk to my neighbors across the road in the snow. We yell to each other. Some of them have Trump flags. We don't get too much into the conversation, but my spidey sense on it is, the average people, the average citizens up here in Sullivan County, New York, which has gone for Trump in the past, they're weary. The problems just are so immense, and I think people are tired. I think the middle ground Republicans, let's say, are weary of this. They've been told over and over and over that Joe Biden is going to bring socialism, the Chinese Communist Army is going to come in. I mean, these are things that have been spread around, on the internet, and Fox News goes right up to the edge of that. So has it infected everyone's mind that Joe Biden and the Chinese Army is going to come marching in, float down the Delaware River, across the Delaware? I don't think that the average person, working person up here is that enamored of that kind of a theory. But there are people who have, I can see their signs still. And, there's a sign across the river that says, "A vote for a Democrat is a vote for communism," a giant house-sized sign that somebody put time and effort into stenciling a hammer and sickle onto. So, I mean, it's like we've just time traveled back to 1955, So that's the long answer to your question is, I sense that enough people are tired of this, that if Joe Biden stays the course and people get vaccinated, that there won't be this kind of groundswell behind, a militia, and let's get Donald Trump back in because the Chinese Communist government is going to come and take our stuff. But I do think that there are small groups of people, and not insignificantly small groups, who, are going to, stay the course. Our neighbor down the road, kid just got arrested for being in the Capitol. I mean, this is, it's real.
So, David, the threat that has been floated by the former president and some of his allies to form a third party, the Patriot Party, to take on Republicans who aren't sufficiently supportive. Is this real? Is this viewed as real by vulnerable Republicans?
I don't think it's viewed as very real, to be honest. I think most people expect that the president does not have the discipline or the willingness to invest his own money or the organizational skill to pull this off, and that most Republicans are quite happy to stay in the Republican Party and just reshape it in a way that will be sort of an amalgam of somehow the Trump Party, the sort of nationalist, autocratic, fascist folks that he brought in, and small government, low tax, deregulatory Republicans. That's sort of a little bit more of the traditional sense. So no, I think we haven't mentioned yet that the president is no longer on social media. Just to remind people, he's not on Facebook. He's not on Twitter. He is his only means of communicating with the world at the moment is the new office of the former president, which is in a strip mall in Florida. That's putting out statements once in a while. That's not a very effective way for him to communicate. I don't think he's yet been on Fox News or his other favorite mouthpieces on television. So I think, that he is going to fade. My own view is that he is going to fade, and that in 2 years, the Republicans will have come up with a different brand, a different way to try and win back power in Washington.
All right. Well, you heard it here. David Hawkins goes on record. We'll be back to check whether you are right in 2 years, David, or you'll be up there on the podium with the inauguration of Donald Trump for his second. All right. Nina Burley, David Hawkins, thank you very much for helping to explain these early days of the Biden administration to our viewers abroad. Thank you for joining us on Dakhel, Washington. Unity and progress. Who could be against these two laudable goals? Indeed, when they come together, they form the name of a longtime ruling party in the country of Guinea, a failed political party in Trinidad and Tobago, and two of the three parts of a famous rallying cry of none other than Mao Zedong. Unity and progress may sound nice together, but they may also be at war with each other. As the saying goes, you have to break eggs to make an omelet. That means you sometimes have to do difficult things, defeat your political opponents, squeak out narrow victories if you want to achieve big results. Thomas Jefferson and John Quincy Adams were both elected by one vote in the Electoral College. For George W. Bush, it was only 537 votes out of millions cast in Florida. Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump's second Supreme Court nominee, was confirmed by the closest vote in 130 years, 50 to 48 to 1, one person voting just present. But they all won by one vote or millions. And the same goes for laws that get approved by one vote or a landslide. Of course, unity is always preferred. In our two-party system, one party is often in control of at least one of the two houses of Congress or the White House, which therefore requires a certain amount of cross-party cooperation to get anything done. The current situation has Democratic control of both the executive and legislative branches, but by the narrowest of margins. Any slippage in either the House or the Senate, and Republicans are ready to pounce and regain control. To get anything done, unity is certainly preferred. But Democrats say that Republicans often chose progress over unity, especially on such big ticket items as Supreme Court nominations, and they are unlikely to turn the other cheek so easily or so meekly. And Democrats have a long list of legislative objectives, from raising the minimum wage to loosening immigration restrictions to extending the Affordable Care Act to more and more Americans. They are eager to enact these while they still have even their narrow congressional majority. The coming impeachment trial of Donald Trump may provide an early test of whether at this most sensitive time in our nation's politics and decades, we can have unity and progress, or whether we need to choose. Our most famous impeachment trial, the one in which Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, narrowly avoided conviction, was decided by a single vote, a vote later characterized as a profile in courage. In this case, different Americans will define courage differently depending on their politics. In my view, I hope unity and progress both win out. بهذا نصل لنهاية هذه الحلقة من برنامج داخل واشنطن. إذا كانت لديكم أي استفسارات أو تعليقات حول هذه الحلقة، وخاصة حول القرارات المبكرة للرئيس بايدن في المكتب البيضاوي، أرجو أن تتواصلوا معي عبر تويتر على هاشتاج Inside Washington أو أن تراسلوني مباشرة على @RobSatloff. سأراكم الأسبوع المقبل، وإلى أن ألقاكم شكرا لكم وإلى اللقاء.